Well, this here's my new bronc buster. This is my daughter, Catherine. Shalom Aleichem, Jackson 2 Bears.
Mr. Ballou, what's the use of saying Shalom Aleichem to me? I'm a full Sioux Indian. I'm not one of the chosen people.
All right, go ahead being stubborn if you want to.
No, I ain't stubborn.
Oh, not much you ain't. You know, according to an ex-congressman of these United States I heard give a lecture at the Chautauqua this winter, Indians is the lost tribe of Israel, but he won't admit it.
Just
Indians is the lost tribe of Israel.
To keep in mind is we're asking the United Nations to help us that charges of genocide, a war against humanity, war crimes, and a crime of aggression be laid, because your Liberal Party was also responsible. Every party, every governance that has been in power, there's been a war conflict of Indian Residential School, 60 Scoop, Indian Day School, and Millennium Scoop. None of your governments have clean hands. All your governments, all of your governments have blood on their hands. None of you are different. You haven't changed because you haven't started your healing journeys. The moment that we have our voice and our backbone, you want to shut us down. And you think you're privileged to disrespect us. The moment we tell you, because of your colonial mindset and your colonial way of being, your white privilege, your white fragility, you can't take our truth. Look how many people came to bat for you, white lady, and you're a guest here. Without us, you'd be homeless. This is over.
Exactly.
For the second time in under 2 months, a statue dedicated to former President Abraham Lincoln's statue was defaced in Chicago. On Thanksgiving, a statue of a young Abraham Lincoln in Senn Park in Chicago's Edgewater neighborhood was found covered in splotches of red paint along with the words, "colonizer," and "land back," the Chicago Tribune reported. According to the outlet, the statue also had Dakota 38 inches written on it, in reference to the Dakota Sioux members who Lincoln ordered to be executed following the Dakota War of 1862. Lincoln commuted the sentences of 264 Dakota fighters but sentenced 38 to be hung in Minnesota, which became the largest mass execution in U.S. history. The statue has resided in the outdoor park since 1997. It was chiseled by sculptor Charles Keck, who also designed monuments of former presidents Andrew Jackson and George Washington. Abraham's statue covered in blood. A similar message was written across another statue of the 16th president in Lincoln Park, roughly 6 miles away from Senn Park, on October 11. The vandals, who remain unidentified, allegedly wrote, "Dethrone the colonizers, land back," and "Avenge the Dakota 38." The Chicago Tribune said the perpetrators also posted the names of the 38 Dakota men with the message, "Tear down the myth of Lincoln the Great Liberator." The statue in Lincoln Park, called Abraham Lincoln, the Man, has been called one of the most significant sculptures of Lincoln from the 19th century and was sculpted by Augustus St. Gaudens in 1887 to 22 years after Lincoln's death. The Chicago police have yet to make any arrests.
I did talk about the founding fathers is, you know, and I live in the state of South Dakota, right? And I grew up there.
Yep.
And I see Mount Rushmore. You know, the 4 founding fathers, one of them anyway.
Right. Yep.
Jefferson, Washington, Lincoln, and what's the other one? Roosevelt,
Right.
modern day founding father.
Right.
Well, each of them we can name, we teach our children. It's like, okay, George Washington, he's the village burner. He ordered his army, Continental Congress Army, to go and kill every Indian that has a village up and along the Missouri or the Mohawk River, and in the state of New York in this area. Any native, and you put a bounty out on them, and you give them, you know, the males the bigger bounty, and if you get them, bring the skins here. And we go on and on and on. Jefferson also called hunt them down like the wolf. He excluded Native people as he was writing, stealing the words from the Iroquois people. Teddy Roosevelt nationalized over 52 million acres to make national parks, and he took those away from reservations. in the early part of the 1900s. Who's left? Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The same day he signed this country's largest mass execution of 38 Dakota men for supposedly stealing a cow that wandered onto their given reservation boundaries. And then the Dakota said, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't know, it didn't have a brand, and we thought it was on our own. We were hungry, we were starving at the time." So the native people gathered about 40 other skinny cattle as well, and gave it to the one farmer. That one farmer wanted justice. He says, "I want the man, I don't want the cows." So all of them said, "I am guilty." So the army came down, and that's when that sort of war came along. And in the end, over 500 were indicted. So Lincoln signed, well, let's only hang 38 of them. They all hung at the same time in Mankato, Minnesota. So these are, the ideas that people are holding up as, well, forget about what we did to the Indians or the native people. Let's hold what this freedom and caring for loving our fellow men is based upon. But let's not talk about the tree roots people. Let's talk about what we can change as far as grassroots movements is concerned. We're not concerned about having a graveyard still under the U.S. Capitol building with the Lenape bones, the graveyard still on that hill of where the U.S. Capitol building. Let's not talk about that.
This was a burial mound sacred
still
to the Indians.
It's still there. It's proven. It's still there. So people want proof. Anything I say can be picked up in a book.
This
the meeting. But we talked about that, and I wanted people to know the truth about that. It was actually, if you want to talk about how Thanksgiving came about.
I do want to talk about it. First of all, you got to remember, my dear brother, that's history, his story. It's not our story. When they proclaimed Thanksgiving, it was in Mystic, Connecticut. A tribe of Indian people, the Pequots, that were thriving and surviving. But shortly after, we taught these white people how to farm and how to take care of the land and raise food. They got beside themselves. A few years after they started prospering, they decided that they were going to take their women and their children out to a big field and have a cookout celebration. No Indians brought deer. There was never a Thanksgiving dinner with them, according to what they say. Not true. The celebration of Thanksgiving was the men walked off from their families and went further north into Mystic, Connecticut, and he murdered these Pequot Indian children, elders, women, and men. Got them in the enclosure of their habitat. They had built forts, per se, but that was only for the protection of their people. And they trapped them in where they couldn't get out, and they set it on fire, and they burned them to death. Then they came back. They were so thankful that they had killed these Indians, that was the first Thanksgiving, not what you read about in their books.
It wasn't until when President Lincoln decided, instead of having it every other day when they were going to different tribes killing them, that he decided to make it once a year, a day of Thanksgiving once a year.
True. And let me tell you about President Lincoln. Because Indians, the Dakota, and Nakota Indians wouldn't give up. These are the people from Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, up in that area, would not give up. They were fighting, and they captured in excess of 200 of them. And they wanted to hang them all. But Lincoln intervened because of politics, should I say politics. And he said, no, I don't want you to hang them all. Pick 38 of them. And that's how they came up with the Mankato 38. That was the largest mass hanging ever in this country, this republic.
With that?
No.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Right
Don't
now,
speak to
stop.
us that way.
Stop right now. You do not speak to us that way. We are human beings. And the way that you're speaking to us
It's
is
not
totally
acceptable.
wrong. You are
No,
not
stop it. Stop it right now.
If you don't, we don't want you here. Can you please leave?
Step out.
Step out.
Step out.
No.
Then I don't want to hear from you.
You have no right.
You don't speak to us like that.
Very simple question. Can I have an answer?
And this is the problem, the way you communicate.
I'm not insinuating anything. I'm looking for information.
I'm not going to argue with you.
I'm not
gonna
arguing
stop
either.
you
No,
right
stop.
now.
Stop.
I'm
You
not
need to
gonna
stop.
argue.
I'm only
You
asking
need to
you-
stop. Stop. Kipishi.
You don't do
Mona
that.
kandoy na mitin chamane na miyak. Asha weshkat kitos chamane na minan kikishchakash ko hono e mane na miyak. Tabrishkoch e kain in nuyak. E kwani e spanik. E kwani makamosha ko may tago siyak. Tabrishkoch e kikishchakakipat siyak. You're a guest here. And you don't even know how to speak to us. You don't even recognize the tone in your voice and your delivery. And no, you're done. You're done. Next question. To keep in mind is we're asking the United Nations to help us that charges of genocide, a war against humanity, war crimes, and a crime of aggression be laid because your Liberal Party was also responsible. Every party, every governance that has been in power. There's been a war conflict of Indian Residential School, 60 Scoop, Indian Day School, and Millennium Scoop. None of your governments have clean hands. All of your governments have blood on their hands. None of you are different. You haven't changed because you haven't started your healing journeys. The moment that we have our voice and our backbone, you want to shut us down. And you think you're privileged to disrespect us. The moment we tell you, because of your colonial mindset and your colonial way of being, your white privilege, your white fragility, you can't take our truth. Look how many people came to bat for you, white lady, and you're a guest here. Without us, you'd be homeless. This is over.
Exactly.
Ah!